There are certain things it makes sense to bargain shop for, and others which you'd be best served by researching and spending good money. Footwear and outerwear are the two things I've always believed it makes sense to go ahead and get the good stuff. You can wear shoes and boots almost every day for years before having them resold, and the experience of wearing them is far better than the cheap options. Outerwear is another thing which you could potentially have for a lifetime. Have a look at your local thrift shop, and you'll find plenty of tweed coats from the 1960s which show very little wear. The initial investment may be high, but the cost per wear ends up being much less than the lesser quality counterparts. Plus, most of us only have a couple jackets, so go ahead and get the best you can afford. Arguably, the king of expensive outerwear is the leather jacket. Sure, there are cashmere coats and furs and stuff like that, but leather jackets tend to command a consistently high price due to the material and its workability or lack thereof. Leather is tricky. It's a natural product which, unlike wool, doesn't come in perfectly cut, pristine rolls. In fact, clicking out leather is really an art in itself. Finding the best portions of a hide for large panels of leather takes a trained eye and a skilled hand. So when I decided to look for my ultimate leather jacket, there were a few factors which narrowed down the options quickly. Number one, I wanted it to be a classic design, but not a reproduction, something that won't look silly in 10 years. 2, I wanted a jacket made from horsehide. This is very much the old school jacket leather, and it was common before cowhide became so readily available. In the world of jackets, there's almost no leather more revered than vegetable tanned horsehide from Japanese tannery Shinki. Number 3, it had to be made by a small-ish shop. Not that there's anything wrong with Schott or other big companies, but I really appreciate supporting smaller businesses. So I narrowed it down to Arrow, Goodwear, The Real McCoys, and Himel Brothers. There were a few others, but these were on my short list. So the research began. Reviews, forums, personal recommendations. I was borderline obsessed and would suggest that anyone looking to buy their perfect leather jacket be as thorough as possible. This isn't a time to settle. If you're going to do this, do it right. A truly great leather jacket will cost you some serious coin, so make sure you get exactly what you want. But there was still one major hurdle to overcome: getting the right fit without being able to try one on beforehand. Getting that trim fit, which still allows for layering, is essential. Fit is king, and I've always had a problem with it. Being 5'8" and built like a troll has never worked in my favor. If the chest fits, the arms are too short. If the arms fit, it doesn't pass the hug test. Some of the brands I was considering were reported to have a very trim fit, and I wasn't willing to chance it. That narrowed it down considerably, and in the end, Himel Brothers stood alone. Not only would they make a jacket based off my measurements, but they are extensively customizable, and in North America, there are only 2 companies which can get their hands on Shinki horsehide. It's also important to add that I've been drooling over Dave Himel's designs for years. Choosing a model was actually easier than I expected. The A1 Heron was exactly what I had in mind. Old school, classic, with unique styling touches. I fired off a message to Dave Himel, who responded by saying he had just gotten some vegetable tanned horsehide from Shinki in a really interesting color. Count me in. Vegetable tanned Shinki horsehide is possibly the finest leather jacket in the world. Unfortunately, it's also pretty rare. So rare, in fact, that Shinki won't supply to just anyone, and I think Dave Himel and John Chapman are the only 2 guys on the continent who use it. Now, Dave Himel has an extensive background in vintage clothing and owns an outstanding jacket collection. His knowledge and experience with cool and rare jackets is unparalleled in my opinion. Using new old stock items, vintage hardware, and rare machinery like the Reese 101 buttonhole machine, each jacket becomes an instant collector's item of curated materials. Cotton thread only found in Germany or a small Connecticut factory is used on all of his jackets, which means a slower sewing process, about 10 to 14 hours worth. They don't make them like they used to, unless we're talking about Himel. As I mentioned, the big selling point to me was the ability to customize the fit. You can do this a couple of ways: through body measurements or by sending them a jacket you currently own with photos of you wearing it. This is the preferred method since they have more accurate data to work with, and most people struggle with taking good actual body measurements. I sent them my free note cloth Mariner jacket since this is one of the best fitting jackets that I own. Nice and trim, but still roomy enough in the chest and the arms. After seeing the jacket and the photos, Dave Himel called me up. And here's an interesting note on this call. My wife and I actually were on our way home from the children's hospital with our 1-year-old after a pretty scary incident when Dave called. I was exhausted, relieved, and pretty drained, but my conversation with him really brightened my mood. Our son was fine and sleeping in his car seat, but after being in the children's hospital, some levity was absolutely welcomed. Dave made suggestions based on what he saw in the photos, and we finalized the details. Wool lining, the new color Shinky horsehide, of course, and the rest was really subject to Dave's creativity. See, when I work with a small shop that I admire, I like to give them the most creative freedom that I can. After all, I like their style, and who am I to change it? If I knew how to make a jacket, I would. But I want a Himel Brothers original. I think it's best to let them handle the artistic process. The next part is the hardest, the waiting. It takes time for a truly great custom piece, but that doesn't mean that I wasn't hoping for a shipment confirmation every single day. It was about 2 months before the jacket arrived at my doorstep, and it was absolutely worth the wait. The fit was excellent, the leather, the stitching, the buttons, and the lining were all better than I had expected, and being vegetable tanned horsehide with a semi-aniline finish, it does start off a bit stiff, but all of that will change with time and wear. So now that I've lived with this jacket for a few months, would I say that a $2,500 leather jacket is worth it? For me, yes. I was looking for something very specific, which was only offered by a few makers, with custom sizing and a unique leather. There's no doubt that this is an instant classic, and who knows how much longer guys like Himel will actually be making such things. It's much more lucrative to peel off a bunch of chrome tanned $500 jackets in small, medium, and large all day and just call it at that. For you, this might be ludicrous and irresponsible. Most people aren't willing to shell out that kind of scratch for a piece of clothing, and they're happy to tell the world in the comment section, as I well know. But there's one final piece to the puzzle: the way this jacket makes you feel. No jacket, not my Shot, my Satchel and Page, none of them have the magic that this one has of making me feel like a rock star each time I wear it. This is next level stuff, and just knowing how it's made and what it's made from carries a lot of weight. Even people who don't know a thing about leather will stare at you. They can't quite put their finger on it, but they know that there's just something different about it. It's not a mall leather jacket. This is easily my most complimented article of clothing. That feeling, no matter how silly it may sound, is worth the price alone. Matter of fact, a few years ago, my band had the pleasure of opening up for a band called Seven Dust at a sold-out show, and I walked off that stage feeling about 10 feet tall. This gives me a taste of that every time I wear it. So it's not the leather jacket for everyone, that's for damn sure. But for some, it's the only leather jacket.